The 2026 FIFA World Cup is going to be massive. It's the biggest World Cup ever, more teams, more games, more stadiums, and potentially the largest audience in the history of sport. And despite everything I'm about to say in this video, there's one thing I think almost every football fan can agree on. The football itself will probably be just fine. There will be last minute winners, shock results, breakout stars, controversial moments, and memories that we'll still be talking about years from now. Every World Cup seems to produce those moments that become part of football history, and 2026 will almost certainly be no different. So this isn't a video about the football, because when the tournament starts we will all be watching. This is a video about everything around the football. Football became the biggest sport in the world because it belongs to everyone. Unlike many sports, football doesn't require expensive equipment, it doesn't require specialist facilities. A ball and a patch of grass is enough. From the streets of Rio to villages in Africa, from Glasgow parks to neighbourhoods in Morocco, football has spread to every corner of the planet because it is accessible. That's what makes football different, and that's exactly why some aspects of the 2026 World Cup feel so concerning for real football fans. Because for a tournament that's supposed to represent the entire world, it increasingly feels like many of the people who made football what it is are being left behind. So while the football itself will almost certainly deliver, here are the reasons why the 2026 World Cup might not be as good as some people may expect it to be. The first problem is ticket prices. Now, World Cup tickets have never exactly been cheap, but attending this tournament could become completely unrealistic for ordinary supporters. Think about everything involved: flights to North America, hotels during one of the biggest sporting events on earth, food, transport, and then the match tickets themselves. For many fans, attending a single match could cost thousands. Following your national team throughout the tournament could easily cost well into five figures, and that's a huge problem because football atmospheres aren't created by wealthy tourists or corporate guests. Rather, they are created by supporters. They're created by the fans who spend years saving to follow their country, the fans who travel across continents, the fans who sing for 90 minutes, the fans who create the images and memories that define World Cups. When people think back to iconic tournaments, they don't just remember the goals, they remember the colours in the stands, the songs, the passion, the thousands of supporters turning foreign cities into temporary homes. If ordinary supporters are increasingly priced out, then the atmosphere inevitably suffers. And unfortunately, ticket prices aren't the only concern awaiting fans in 2026. Because once the players actually step onto the pitch, there could be another major problem. Quite literally, the pitch itself. Many of the stadiums being used in the United States were not purpose-built for football. They were built for American football, and that matters. A significant number of NFL stadiums use artificial turf or surfaces designed around a completely different sport. For the World Cup, many of these venues will have temporary grass pitches installed. Now, on paper, that sounds like no big deal, but we've already seen problems with this before. During the 2024 Copa America, numerous players and managers criticised the quality of certain playing surfaces. Questions were raised about pitch dimensions, grass quality, and whether some venues were truly suitable for elite level football. This wasn't some minor complaint either. Several of the world's best players openly questioned the conditions, and there's also a wider debate in football surrounding artificial turf and converted surfaces. Various studies over the years have suggested increased risk of certain lower body injuries on artificial pitches compared to natural grass, particularly involving knees and ankles. Now, nobody can guarantee that injuries will become a major issue at the World Cup, but if the biggest football tournament on earth is being played in stadiums that weren't originally designed for it, concerns about pitch quality are completely understandable, because fans want matches to be decided by talent, not by poor playing surfaces. And while pitch quality is a football problem, the next issue has very little to do with football at all, and that's politics. The World Cup is supposed to be one of the few events that brings the entire world together. For a few weeks, politics is supposed to take a back seat. Football is supposed to be the focus. But there are already concerns surrounding travel restrictions and visa access. We've already seen examples involving individuals connected to national teams experiencing difficulties entering the United States. Questions have been raised around figures linked to countries like Switzerland and Iraq, with visa complications becoming part of the conversation before the tournament has even begun. And that's what worries people, not necessarily one individual case, but the possibility that politics becomes one of the defining stories of the tournament. because hosting a truly global event means welcoming athletes, photographers, journalists, staff members, and supporters from every corner of the planet. If people connected to participating nations face uncertainty about whether they'll be able to enter the host country, then concerns are inevitable. The World Cup should be about football, not visa disputes, not diplomatic disagreements, not immigration headlines. Unfortunately, that's far from the only controversial decision FIFA has made regarding this tournament, because for the first time ever, the World Cup will feature 48 teams. And while that may sound exciting to some people, not everyone is convinced it's a good thing, and I certainly personally am not. On the surface, expansion sounds fantastic. More countries get to participate, more fans get to experience the World Cup, more nations get the opportunity to dream, and those are all genuine positives that I would agree with. But there is another side to the argument. Part of what made qualifying for the World Cup so special was how difficult it was. Making a World Cup meant you were among the elite. Now with 48 places available, qualification inevitably becomes easier, and many fans worry that the group stages could become diluted as a result. You see the group containing Brazil, Scotland, Morocco and Haiti. There's no disrespect to Haiti here whatsoever. Every nation deserves the chance to compete if they make it there. But are the matches like that really going to carry the same competitive balance and tension as some of the classic World Cup groups we've seen in previous tournaments? One of the reasons World Cup group stages are so captivating is because every game feels dangerous even for the biggest teams. Every result matters. Every nation feels capable of causing problems. The more the tournament expands, the greater the possibility of mismatches becoming common. More teams do not automatically mean more quality. And if the early stages become predictable, one of the most exciting parts of the tournament could lose some of its magic. But even if you disagree with that argument, there's another issue that could affect every single supporter attending the tournament. Getting around. Now, to be fair, the United States is enormous. No country hosting a World Cup of this scale was ever going to make travel completely easy. But the problem isn't just the distance, it's how difficult many journeys can become once you actually arrive. One thing football fans from Europe, South America and parts of Asia often take for granted is public transport. You can land in a city, jump on a train, take a metro, walk to a stadium and be surrounded by thousands of supporters doing exactly the same thing. For many of the host cities in 2026, that simply isn't the reality. A huge number of stadiums are designed around car travel. Large parking lots, major highways, long distances between city centres and venues. And while that might work perfectly well for domestic American sports, it's not necessarily ideal for a World Cup. This is a tournament where hundreds of thousands of international supporters are expected to move around unfamiliar cities. Many won't have cars, many won't understand the transport systems, many will be relying entirely on public infrastructure. And that's where concerns begin. Because for one of the richest and most developed countries on earth, the lack of accessible public transport around some major sporting venues is surprisingly poor. Then there are the distances between host cities themselves. Imagine you're following your national team. One game is in Dallas, one game is in New York, then the next is perhaps in Los Angeles or Seattle or Miami. You're not travelling between neighbouring cities, you're travelling across a continental landmass. What should feel like a football festival could end up feeling like a series of expensive flights and hotel bookings. And this is where many of the concerns we've discussed start to connect with one another. Because expensive tickets are one thing, long travel distances are another, but combine them together, expensive accommodation, difficult logistics, and suddenly attending the World Cup becomes a luxury rather than a celebration. And that leads us to what might be the biggest question surrounding the entire tournament. Can the United States create a true World Cup atmosphere? Now, before anyone misunderstands this point, let's make something clear. Football in America is growing. The sport is bigger than it's ever been. Attendances are increasing, interest is increasing, and the arrival of Messi generated enormous attention across the country. The United States absolutely has some passionate football fans, but football still isn't America's number one sport. Far from it, in fact. It's competing with American football, basketball, baseball, college sports even. So these sports that have dominated American culture for generations, compare that to countries where football isn't simply popular, it's everything. In Argentina, football dominates conversations. In Morocco, football unites communities. In Brazil, football is a major part of their national identity. In countless countries across Europe, Africa, Asia and South America, football isn't just one entertainment option among many, it's the sport. And that's important because World Cup atmospheres don't appear automatically. They have to be created. They have to be created by travelling supporters, fans filling city centres, and thousands of people singing, supporters taking over public squares, football culture. The greatest World Cups feel like entire countries have become one giant football festival, and that's where all of these concerns come together, because if supporters are struggling to afford tickets, if travelling between venues becomes incredibly expensive, if some fans may face visa complications, if attending the tournament becomes financially impossible for many ordinary people, then who replaces them? Corporate guests, sponsors, influencers, celebrities, people who may be excited to attend a World Cup final, but who aren't necessarily the people creating the atmosphere that makes the World Cup special. And to be clear, there's nothing inherently wrong with a celebrity being at a football match. The problem comes when genuine supporters aren't allowed to attend to accommodate for them. Football's greatest strength has always been its accessibility. It's why the sport became bigger than every other sport on earth. A child in Brazil can dream of playing football. A child in Senegal can dream of playing football. A child in Croatia can dream of playing football. A child almost anywhere in the world can dream of becoming a footballer, no matter their wealth, no matter their race. It literally doesn't matter. Football spread across the globe because it never belonged exclusively to the wealthy, it belonged to everyone, which is why some fans look at the 2026 World Cup and see some worrying signs. Not because the football will be bad, the football will probably be fantastic. Not because the players won't perform, I'm sure they will. Not because there won't be unforgettable moments, there absolutely will be. The concern is that the tournament is increasingly designed around maximising revenue rather than maximising accessibility. And if football starts losing accessibility, then it starts losing part of what made it special in the first place. Now, maybe these fears will prove completely wrong. Maybe ticket prices won't end up as bad as expected and will be adjusted for. Maybe transport systems will be working well. Maybe the standard format will create unforgettable stories and new underdog nations. I genuinely would hope that that's the case, because every football fan should want this World Cup to succeed. But right now, there are legitimate questions hanging over this tournament. Questions about affordability, questions about accessibility, questions about politics, questions about infrastructure, questions about whether expansion will improve the competition or dilute it. And those questions aren't going away. The reality is that when the opening match kicks off in 2026, billions of people will be able, the stars will become legends, the football itself will almost certainly deliver. But the greatest World Cups are about more than football. They're about the people. The supporters travelling halfway around the world, they're about cultures meeting, they're about fans creating memories that last forever, and that's why the biggest challenge facing the 2026 World Cup isn't what happens on the pitch. It's whether ordinary football supporters will still feel like the tournament belongs to them, because if the World Cup loses that connection to the fans who made football the world's game, then no amount of bigger stadiums, bigger sponsorships, or bigger television audiences will ever truly replace it.